today's going to be a bit of a different type of vlog. You see, we have been running wildly across the country over the course of the last, how many months?
Since June, so about 4, 3.
How many states?
Too many to count.
Okay. Today, we're not doing that. We are still crossing a state on the way down to Columbus for Origins, which is the weekend you're watching this vlog. I know.
You're inside of another vlog. This vlog is inside of another vlog, which is going to be inside of another vlog
so
and another vlog.
Like nesting eggs of vlog. We thought we'd swing by a Barnes & Noble on the way, the most requested location ever since I did the top 10 board games at Target. And this time we're putting a bit of a spin on it. First off, you're coming with us over there to check it out. Second off, we're not only going to find the board games we like the most at Barnes & Noble, but they have such a notable collection, we're going to find the board games we like the least. So, ready to go?
Let's head there.
Let's do it. Now, when I say best, what does that mean? And, well, I guess also when I say worst, what does that mean? This is going to be a combination of my personal preference, because there's no way to get free from it, and also games that I think those of you that are watching this, who are maybe newer to the board game hobby, or your main store is going to be a Barnes & Noble, these are going to be games that I would recommend you picking up. Not necessarily because they're in my genre, like all Euros or all storytelling, but because they'll provide a good foundation for what this hobby space is. And also, hopefully, a few warning signs, in my personal opinion, of things that might make you not enjoy our space quite as much. What did you find?
I found a top. See, it goes like this. Yeah, that's what it does?
I think it's a chair.
That's it. Oh, this is fun now. Whee! I gotta lean into it.
Yeah, it's a chair. It's kind of spinny. No, I don't like. Stop. Oh, please quit. No. Why? Oh, God. So we're sifting through and hunting, and Barnes & Noble actually has
a surprisingly large collection. I was shocked when I saw some of like my favorites and worsts on the shelves. There are so many things here.
I'm also worried I'm going to overlook a few things because I keep looking in nooks and crannies and corners. And
I keep finding hidden surprise and gems all over the place.
I pointed out one of your favorite games of all time, and it was on the bottom shelf tucked behind another one.
There were only 2 copies left, so I was really happy you pointed it out.
Listen, if you're coming to Barnes & Noble, the first thing I can say, do your due diligence to check the shelves, because they actually have some really, really cool products just filtering all around. All right, what do you see so far? What are you thinking?
I am thinking Pandemic Legacy, Everdell, Castles of Tuscany. My City is one that we are actually wanting to play. We want to jump into that one. There's Risk, Civilization, Ticket to Ride, Dominion. Oh, so many code names. Santorini.
How are you going to narrow down a list here? You only have 5.
Oh, I'm going to make you do that. That's up to you.
Okay. So in my opinion, the 5 worst games to get here at Barnes & Noble, well, they're going to be this list. First off, I'm going to start with a little small box game called The Mind. The Mind's going to be a game that is more of an experience than it is an actual game as far as I'm concerned. You see, you're going to be playing through a series of cards, 1 through 100, and you're going to be doing your best to lay them down one at a time, in order, all the way up to the end of that stack. However, everyone around the table is not able to communicate with each other. And so you have this weird, awkward silence where people are waiting, counting in their head, doing their very best to plan and math and perfect that timeline. And if someone messes up, that's it. Game's over. I did like The Mind as an experience. A one-time thing. A thing that was worth trying. But as far as a game that I think you should pick up and take home that you're going to want to play over and over again, I just don't think this is competitive. Next on my list is going to be a game that I actually picked up way back in the day when I first started getting into the new age of board games. It's going to be Munchkin. Munchkin is an interesting game because it has so many different IPs and so many different cards and mechanics and things that draw you into thinking that you're going to absolutely love this series of game. And there is something to be said for a lightweight game that's purely luck-based that allows you to roll and have fun and experience sort of the high moments of an RPG game or a role-playing game. However, if I was going to recommend a game for someone to pick up, Munchkin is just too luck-driven, and I think most people that grab it don't fully understand what the game is supposed to be. It's supposed to be silly and ridiculous and fun, but it oftentimes ends up in being all the players ganging up on a single person at the very end, doing their very best to keep them from, well, winning, from slaying the final beast or getting to the very end point. And that just ends up not really being as much fun as the game should be or could be, so I wouldn't recommend Munchkin. Next is going to be another title. We're going to have Planet. Planet is a game that's all about connecting various different regions on a map. You're going to have this circular planet-shaped object that's magnetic, and all your pieces are going to stick to various sides of it, and you're trying to create ecosystems or regions that match up with the animals who are supposed to be living or inhabiting that planet. And of course, that relates to points that you're getting every round of the game. It's a really interesting puzzle, and for me, I had two major problems with it. First off, I wanted the planet to look like a planet, but you actually have to work against that nature in order to score very well for the game. Splitting up regions or separating columns or not making something look like a habitable ecosystem. Second off, I didn't find the replayability of the game that fascinating or that interesting. There's a little bit of variability when it comes to the animals that are coming out and how you're scoring each round, but after I played it the first 1, 2, 3 times, I didn't ever have a need to go back to it. I think there's a lot of other games that are tile laying, that deal with sort of spatial recognition or pattern building, that do this type of system or this type of mechanic a lot better than Planet does. Next on my list is going to be Mariposas. This is going to be all about butterflies flying down, migrating into Mexico, and then coming back up into the United States. It's a game about migration, right? I think it's actually up from Mexico, then back down. Either way, I got that backwards. Either way, you're going to be doing your best to move, proliferate, birth new butterflies, and spread over the region, trying to go to different flowers, score different points, collect and gain different bonuses, and then find your way back down in order to score. And this was just a total miss for me. I was so excited about Mariposas because when it first came out, it was designed by Elizabeth Hargrave, who designed Wingspan, which is one of my favorites, and the theming and everything seemed so strong. But for me, this fell flat because I had to push so hard to drive up into the far regions of the map. I felt like I didn't have really enough agency or enough actions over what I was supposed to do. The randomness on where I could score and the potential tile flips that gave different people different bonuses and victory points, it ended up being a very flat experience that seemed to be driven primarily by the game itself and not by me and my agency. I wouldn't recommend Mariposas if anyone was here trying to expand their library. And finally, the last one, another game that I got early on in my hobby career, is going to be Forbidden Desert. This is going to be a cooperative game, and there are so many other better cooperative games here at Barnes & Noble. This game is going to be all about maneuvering around a desert, doing your best to flip tiles, searching for lost relics, to put together a ship that's going to allow you to sail out of this area. And the desert is slowly growing and covering you up, and everything's sort of disappearing underneath the fog of the sand. The game's interesting in its premise and its application, but I've never found any of the Forbidden Games series to be games that really hooked me or drew me in. They all fall in line with the same player taking control of the game state, and I really, really don't like when one player is running the show for me. There is a best action in Forbidden Desert, and everyone at the table knows it, and if you're making a wrong action, more experienced players are going to see and either grit their teeth or call it out. So, in my opinion, those are going to be the 5 games that you should not get here at Barnes & Noble. And, of course, I've skipped over a pile of other games that should have been on my list. Things like Risk, Monopoly, Clue, all these historic games that you might have grown up with. I really, highly would recommend that you go for something that you didn't used to play as a kid. Most of those games have aged out of common name board games. And while I do have fond memories of them, I have to be honest, a lot of them weren't really designed to be that fun. Now, there are some games that aren't making it on our worst of list, even though I'm pretty sure they should. I'm sorry, I don't mean to dogpile on this, but dogpile? I don't even know what this is. My guess is that it probably isn't the greatest, but here's the thing. If we haven't played it, and if it's sort of punching low, like it's not a beefy game that we feel like deserves a bit of criticism because you're at risk of buying it and walking out, we're really not covering it. So there are a whole slew of little sort of filler games, stuffing stalkers as my family would call them, that are probably not great, but they're also probably not terrible. And they're probably not at risk of you spending $30 to $50 on them. So they're just not making the conversation. So that was my list of 5 games you should not get here, and now I'm going to handle Shira's list as well. You see, I'm doing our list of 10 games you should not buy at Barnes & Noble, and she's going to be doing the top 10 best games, 5 from me, 5 from her. So on her list, starting out at the very top of it, is going to be a little game called Watergate, which I actually think we need to give another chance, but this game didn't work for either of us. You see, this is going to be a strategic tug-of-war game where you're playing cards in the Watergate scandal or Watergate trial, doing your very best to maneuver and finally capture Nixon or avoid capture from all the journalists and detectives. This game, for me, during that first play, ended up being this abstracted tug-of-war where I didn't really understand the premise of it. The cards felt very samey and generic, and a lot of people really do love this game. But if you're coming to my list, I'm just not going to be able to recommend this as a head-to-head 2-player dueling game. Unless, of course, you love Watergate. And then there's a good chance that I'm wrong on this one, but it's still going to be here needless. Another game is going to be a game called Wavelength. Wavelength is a really good 10-minute experience. You see, in Wavelength, you're going to be doing your very best to interpret your teammates' judgment. What they think ranges from one side to another on a sliding scale. You see, they'll get a clue, something like on a range of hot to cold. And then you'll have a dial that you're trying to narrow in. Is it super hot like lava, super cold like icebergs, or somewhere in the middle like coffee or a cappuccino? That will determine, as you reveal that clue, how close you are to your opponent or your teammate, giving you a series of points for how accurate you are to their mental mind map. The very first few moments of this game feel intense and awesome. When you strike that perfect chord, it's an amazing experience, and then about 10 minutes later you find that the game has fallen flat and you're doing the same thing over and over again. Wavelength was another one of these party games that just did not work for me at all. After that, I'm gonna have to pull in Dune. Not because Dune is necessarily a bad game. In fact, this is an amazing strategic bluffing puzzle where you're doing your very best to war against other factions and trying to navigate your way around the Dune world or the Dune series. You're going to be taking control of factions that break certain game mechanics, that do their very best to establish control and fight for the resource, fight for the spice that's coming up from the desert shores. Here's the issue. I don't think that if you're coming to Barnes & Noble to shop for board games, you should leave with this one. I think this is a very rare and specific game that people should pick up. You see, it's heavy and complicated. It has and requires an intense number of players, takes a long time to teach, and compounds all of that with a degree of randomness and little bits of game-breaking mechanisms that can really ruin the experience. Dune is a game that you should play for the first time by going over to a friend's house who already owns it. You should not be the person bringing this home and insisting that your game group gives it a try. It's just, in my opinion, a little bit overbearing, and maybe not something you'll get to the table that often. Next, we're going to have a very simple, very classic, very historic game that a lot of you probably have a little bit of nostalgia for. This is going to be Monopoly. Now, I have Monopoly Friends Edition here because Shira loves the TV show Friends and thinks that this is a insult to a show that she likes so much, but this really goes on to any generic Monopoly, any Monopoly with a random IP or a different licensing. You see, Monopoly as a core game was never really designed to be fun. It's a good game for one specific player, for the player or the individual who ends up taking all of the money from their opponents. Outside of that, it's going to be dice rolling, luck driven, with a game-breaking strategy that, if you know how to do it, will really ruin the game for everyone around you. Assuming, of course, you fall into that lucky pattern. Now, I don't want to give you the impression that gamers don't like you if you like Monopoly. I grew up playing Monopoly and remember having good moments with it. But I think what a lot of gamers are trying to express when they hit back at Monopoly is, and notably, they don't always do the best job of it, but it's that we don't want our hobby to be defined by this game anymore. Monopoly is a game that did set the foundation for a lot of people in this space, but the reality is there are so many more incredible, amazing, and better designed games. Monopoly at this point is a licensing kind of IP grab, and that's about all it's good for. Finally, we're going to swing in with Jumanji. Jumanji is going to be a title that's all about chaos and having fun around the table, and it does a decent job at making you do weird and wacky things. You see, you'll be rolling a dice, flipping a card, resolving a riddle, and then enacting or reenacting different elements of the Jumanji script, from rolling an object across the floor like a monkey, or doing your very best to mime fishing for piranhas there at the game table. But for me, Jumanji's too much focused on those fun, weird interactions and too little focused on the actual board game and game experience. It's chaotic and messy, and really didn't have the attention paid to the IP that I would have liked to see in the world of Jumanji. If you're playing with a group of kids, you might be able to have a good time off the premises that it presents, but for the most part, I would not encourage you to pick it up. I know, I watched the movie and the TV show as well, and I, just like you, want to play in that world that Robin Williams created. But this just isn't what that historic game, well, promised that it should be. So, there you have it. There's Shira's top 5 paired with my top 5. Let's swing over and find out a little bit more about the games that you should be leaving Barnes & Noble with.
I'm going to launch into my top 5 before I touch Jesse's top 5. And hands down, the one that first came to mind, and I got so excited when I saw it, I don't know if you guys can see, is Terraforming Mars. So, Terraforming Mars is probably one of the biggest and heaviest games, or the first biggest and heaviest game that I got into. This is a game where you are working to colonize Mars. You are working to increase the oxygen, you're working to increase the temperature, you're working to put water there, and you are doing it with a series of cards. You are playing cards to gain powers and abilities to generate resources, spend those resources, and get more money to then further your little terraform city, essentially. We have always played with the drafting mechanic, which is one of my favorite mechanics, and I think actually makes the game so much better and makes it essential. This game has been really on my top 10, and actually my real top 10, not just the one from Barnes & Noble, but my actual top 10 since I started playing it. I both love the space exploration theme, I love the mechanics involved of playing cards down, and also there's a little bit of meanness that can get involved in stealing resources and messing up your opponent's systems that they've got going on, stealing animals and plants and microbes. You can really get a little mean in this game, and as you all know, I like to get a little bit mean in my games. The next one, hands down, that I had to put on this list was Aquatica. And Aquatica is also going to go on my actual top 10 list. Aquatica is a game based on underwater aquatics. You get cards with different sea creatures, and you are going, I don't know if you can see it, but you're going to be using this board, sliding them up, both getting military value and coins as currency to spend during the game, to both get to cash in your cards for points, do some scoring conditions, and I mean that's the goal of the game, to get the most points and get more cards, which gives you more powers and abilities. This game, first of all, my favorite color is blue, which I have to mention every single time. There's also an amazing deep water expansion that just takes it to another level. And one thing that I really like about this game is that you can actually play 2 different ways. One is with a couple variable scoring objectives, and one is with the standard scoring objectives. And with the standard ones, we found that our game takes a little a little quicker, which can be helpful if you want to play and dive into this really amazing game and don't have as much time as the longer game might take. I really like just what it's doing and the mechanics. I haven't really played with a board that you slide the cards up and then thereby are unlocking things and cascading things, and cards like chain off of each other and make these really cool moves. A game that, and I'm pairing these up even though technically they're two different games. This is the third one on the list. Seven Wonders Duel. And so Seven Wonders was actually one of the first games that Alex from Board Game Co. got me into. It's a game, and I believe it is based, lead one of the 7 greatest cities of antiquity, develop your civilization's military, science, culture, and economy. Once built, will your wonder bring you glory for millennia to come? You are working to build 3 different wonders throughout the game. You're going to be getting cards throughout the game, science, military, culture, and economy, and essentially getting sets of cards, resources to build your wonder. The artwork in this game is exquisite. And Duel is, in my opinion, the better version of Seven Wonders, but in a 2-player way where you're going head to head. You really have to concentrate on one mechanic, because if you try to dabble in all of them, you kind of get a little bit of nothing. If you go really strong military, you can really outpace the rest. If you go heavy science, you can really outpace the rest. And you can use your opponent's resources actually by paying them and giving them money to help further your own. The person who builds all their wonders first and gets the most points wins once again. Fourth is Horrified, and we actually just got introduced to this over by Sam Healy in Washington. Horrified is a game, and this is a game based on the classic monsters that you would fight. Frankenstein, Dracula, the Mummy. You are basically playing a cooperative game where you are taking actions, moving around the board, and trying to solve the different riddles to defeat each monster. Each monster has a specific puzzle that you have to solve. One of the monsters, you have to move things in a little crypt. Another one, you have to take certain tokens. The tokens have different values. You have to take tokens to different locations and thereby unlocking this. Frankenstein and the Bride, you can't let them meet. It's all very, very strongly thematic. This is one of my favorite cooperative games, and it's also a great gateway game. It is very easy to get up and running and start playing, and it's a lot of fun. I didn't feel, with some cooperative games, sometimes I feel like one person kind of just takes the lead and goes off running. I felt like everyone was involved in the decision. It was a table discussion. We were all trying to decide what to do. One person would point out something that we had missed. Some people would try and lure the monsters towards them so another person can accomplish what they were trying to do. It was a really great team-based activity, and it was a lot of fun. And then last but not least is Splendor. And I know Splendor is kind of one of these typical gateway games. Tableau building. I'm not sure if it's tableau building, set collection. You're laying cards down in front of you, which gives you more resources to then get larger cards, which, talking, not always my strongest. The first person to score 15 points wins the game, and you're basically collecting these different gems. There's tiers of cards, each one is more expensive. When you build gems down, they count towards discounting the cost of the next card that you're building. This game, first of all, the mouthfeel of the components is excellent. The tokens are really cool. We played this just a couple weeks ago, me, Jan, and Jesse. And it was funny because I've played a lot of different games in the hobby. I've played Inish, Cyclades, Kemet, Blood Rage, Terraforming Mars, so many, and I kind of miss this like simple yet really, really nice. It's very calming. It's a great game to put on some background music, and you can also get really competitive in it. You can kind of sneak and get points when your opponents aren't looking, and I didn't actually realize I had won until I had won the game. This game is a wonderful game to bring people into the hobby, to show them and start getting them into the mechanics of sequencing things, looking for cards, looking towards your opponents are doing things that might mess up your opponents and while furthering your gain. I think this is a wonderful little addition to your collection. And now I'm going to jump over to Jesse's. Hi there! Alright, so now I'm going to jump into Jesse's top 5, or the ones that I could actually talk about, because there's some games that he actually wanted to mention that I haven't played yet. So those are going to go on our list of ones to play. So Santorini. This is actually the New York version, it's not the original version. This is a 2-player head-to-head game where each player is getting a power and ability, and that is how they are going to move their pieces around the board. You're trying to build a tier of 1, 2, either I think 3 or 4th level, where you cap it with a little blue dome, and the first person to do that wins. Your card, or the player you're playing as, gives you a certain ability and directs how you can move around the board and build the little blocks to essentially build your tower. This is one of my favorite games to play. 2-player head-to-head couple. It can get really cool with the different mashups of all the abilities. The variability is always expounding. You can also get pretty mean and squash your opponents, and it's a great game for kids of all ages as well. I play with a 10-year-old actually, and she beats me pretty frequently. The next game is Shobu. Shobu is a little abstract strategy game, also for 2 players. I believe I won Jesse in this the first time we played. It's a really cool game where each player has a color, and you are moving stones on one board and mirroring that on the other board. And you are trying to knock off all 4 of your opponent's stones from one of the boards before the other person does it to you. You can get really gridlocked, and it's really thinky. A lot of analysis paralysis can get involved, but when you find that perfect move that they can't get out of, when you corner them, the satisfaction that you feel is amazing. The stones are also really pretty. The wood boards are really nice. The cord in between separates the boards. It's really pretty as well. The third game is Pandemic Legacy. And which season is this? This is season 0. This is actually the newest one, I believe, that has come out. I don't think we have played this one. I have played season 2, and I know my friends have played season 1 and 2. We are all trying to get together so that we can play season 0. They're all similar and different to the original base game, Pandemic. You were working cooperatively as a team to try and stop the spread of this disease across the entire world. Each game mixes it up a little, and this one is a legacy game. So each session that you play reveals more information than you had the last one. They build on top of each other. Players might die, or players might get sick in one game to the next game. You might have to change out players. You get both strengths, and you get more powers and abilities, and you also get things that limit you and hinder you. It's a really awesome cooperative game to play if you have a consistent group, player game group, and it's very thematic with what's going on in our world these days. Fourth on the list is Red Rising. This is a game that is actually based on a book, and the books are by Pierce Brown. It's a series of books, and Justin's actually going to talk to you about the book a little later, because he is in the middle of listening to the audiobooks. He listens to them all the time. It's his new favorite series to listen to. The game, however, deals with gathering cards and trying to get really the best set of cards in your hand that will score you the most points. Different factions build off of each other and combine with each other in ways. You have a board where you can get cards from 4 different piles. You're also getting different resources, which are triggering the end game. But ultimately, it depends on the cards in your hand that is going to score you at the end. And then, last but not least, Everdell. So, Everdell has actually been on my list of games that I do not like. I played it probably before I was ready. Everdell is a pretty heavy game with a lot of sequencing and thinking ahead of what you're going to do, and it is a worker placement game where you're getting these pairs of animals to kind of build out your little civilization of forest critters. The components were amazing when I played. However, I was frustrated by how limited I felt in the first round. And it's a typical complaint with a lot of worker placements, that you feel like you're not getting anything done, and by the time you get to the third round, you have so exponentially surged that you have gotten so much done. This is a game that Jesse is really, really fond of. There's a lot of expansions to it, and I want to give it another shot. A lot of my friends in my player group have loved this game and talk so highly of this game, and if enough people really like a game around you and kind of are important to you, I think it's time to give it another shot. The one thing I did love about this game was both the artwork and the components and the design. It was really nice. You can also get a little mean here by taking the slots that your opponents need, by looking at what resources that are trying to obtain and stuff like that. But this one has a lot of story, and as you all know, Jesse's favorite thing is story. So that's Jesse's top 5, and I think we're gonna go show you some more things.
There you have it. Oh my gosh, I am just sorry, it's the bag that I have here as well.
You have said your opinion of the game.
Ooh, I knocked over a game that was on my worst list as well. There you have it. That's our best and worst based off of what's here at this Barnes & Noble. And I'm going to be honest, my fear of overlooking things actually did happen. While you were going through my top 5, I ended up finding a few others that would have competed. I don't know if they would have gotten it in, but there's a copy of Scythe hidden over the corner there. Cristallo is a great solo player game that's over here on one of the side shelves. And Hive, which is just an immaculate little puzzle full of insects, is also over on the corner.
There's some that I missed as well. Carcassonne, Codenames, I know we talk about it. Wingspan, there are some true gems over here.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of games. And just so you're wondering, if you've seen our Target video, we did make some tactical choices based off of what we listed in that video. So there's actually a little bit of overlap. Feel free to swing over there and watch the Target video to get a bit more insight into what is good and not good here at Barnes & Noble. Okay, so I don't think it would be a fair Barnes & Noble video without at least a bit of a book review. And I gotta be honest, I had no idea about Red Rising until the game came out. And then it was on my radar, right? I was intrigued. I liked the premise. People seemed to enjoy the book enough that an interesting and really well done board game was made off of it. But I had no idea how fantastic the entire Red Rising series is. I'm all the way up to Morningstar at the moment, listening to them on Audible, and the very first time I tuned in, I was on a 18-hour car drive, and I listened for, well, the entirety of the drive. I read the whole book in a single sitting. And I've just continued going. In fact, I am a little bit frustrated and begrudged whenever I don't get an opportunity to sit and just listen, because I want to consume them all. And after that, I want to own them all, and then reread them all, and then listen to them all again, and then buy and play and engage with the board game, because this is going to be one of those examples where, in spite of myself, I think the board game probably goes up an entire point on my scale just from having the knowledge of the books themselves. The complexity of the social systems, the world that is created in this series is so fascinating. And the board game actually gives homage to a bit of that hierarchy system, to a bit of what's happening in the story. You just don't know until you know. So, if you're here, if you like board games, if you like a bit of science fiction, if you want to read a kind of jaw-gripping novel, Red Rising, the entire series, is highly recommended by me. I think the last book that I loved as much as this would be... Where is it? The last book that I loved as much of this would be Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, specifically Xenocide and Children of the Mind, or something like that. The Ender's Game series, specifically the 2 books after the original Ender's Game. So if that gives you any reference of what I like, what I read, and what you should pick up. So, there you are. There's the book side of the Barnes & Noble board game video. So, there we have it. That is the, most of the vlog. We still have to make it over to Origins, which is going to be a little bit of this vlog, and then mostly, really, next week, where we'll highlight and tell you and talk to you about everything that happened there. By the way, if you can go home with a full, life-size chess set, that might be a good pickup at Barnes & Noble. You'll need a yard for it, and space, or at least kick the kids out of the bedroom. One of the various options. How'd the vlog go?
How'd
the story go? We had some change of plans.
Yeah, we thought we were each gonna do top 5 and a worst 5, and I couldn't gather my thoughts for the worst 5.
You didn't like punching on things.
No, or I was punching too hard on some things. So you ended up taking the worst, and I ended up taking the best. And
Which
trying to do.
I honestly think worked really well, because I got a chance to dive into and be critical of a few different items, some of which I added to your list because you hadn't played them, like Wavelength. I'm going to be honest, not on her list, but I found it after my list was already recorded, and there was no way I was letting it escape this list. And you got to highlight a bunch of stuff that you actually really enjoy over in your top 10. I already have my target top 10. Some of the stuff was repeats, some of the stuff was going over sort of new ground. And so I think it worked out really well.
Yeah.
Filming in public, filming kind of at a store on an adventure is always a bit of a mess. You're doing this dance of trying to be respectful to other people, trying to get a good quality video, trying to work around audio and music.
Wind.
Yeah, which you're probably hearing right now because we're walking with the wind, which is something I've remembered I should not do. The microphone does not like it. That's a wrap. We made it to the convention center. We're here at Origins, ready to hand out a pile of, oh, so loud, a pile of ducks. Let us know, was our list accurate, inaccurate? What are you excited about? What are you picking up yourself? And first and foremost, what do you want us to cover here? We won't actually be able to see the comments, but it's a good question, I think. That's it for this vlog. We're gonna start the next one right about now. Hello, welcome to Quackalope at Origins. This is gonna be a fun, exciting weekend, and there's already a line, which is my least favorite part of cons. Waiting in lines, to wait in more lines, to wait in more lines. So we'll see how this one works.